Good morning. We are moving quickly through the semester. We are on the back 1/3 of the semester. Um, as you remember, the semester is divided into really three segments. The first segment is really about developing an overview of what kinesiology really is and what it entails. The middle third of the semester is a topical view of some specific disciplines, right? So we've looked at biomechanics, we've looked at physiology, we've looked at psychology. Um, all very important depending on where you're going in this field. Some are going to be a little bit more important than others. Now, this last third, as you guys know, and as I've said repeatedly, the other part of this class is to give you guys or get you guys thinking about what you want to do for your career. All right, so that's what this last third is particularly about. So we've done interviews so far with various people in the field. Now we're talking about how do you get to be a professional, right? And that's what this chapter is. Chapter 11 is becoming a physical activity professional. So, if we were live, I would sit up there and I would probably stand in front of everyone and say, well, how many of you know exactly what you want to do when you graduate? You know, and commonly, I would say less than half the class, probably 1/3 of the class actually knows exactly what they want to do in 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. And then my follow-up question would be, do any of you have any anxiety, any fear, any stress of being maybe a little bit lost in college, and this is very normal. I can 100% relate to this, and when I speak to you guys about my career, you guys will see, it's very normal to be lost in your, late teens, early 20s with regards to your career. You haven't really, for many of you, been exposed to the world to know what you truly want to do for the rest of your life, right? So it's very, very normal. Having said that, I do think it is important to really start moving now. As you guys are 20, 21, give or take, it's very important to really start moving in a specific direction. And there's benefits for that for early decision on a career. One is that, as you become, let's say, 35 and 40 and you're in a field, right, this is going to greatly disrupt your life if you choose to move in a different career path. Maybe you have to go back to school, you have to pay for education, your income stops, right? So it can be very costly, both financially, stressful, and it can be costly in your personal life as well. Um, Second big benefit would be you can better develop, you can better relate your college material early on, and this makes sense. Speaking firsthand, which I'll speak to you guys about my business later on in the semester. I graduated with a degree in business administration and a concentration in sports management, and I took plenty of classes like facility management, marketing, and all of these other things. And I didn't open my gym probably until about 5 years after I graduated, maybe a little bit more, and I definitely regret that because I wasn't able to fully relate my undergraduate material because at the time I didn't know what I was doing. Right, so you can better relate your college education to your career the sooner you get into that career. And then finally, and I don't remember if this one was in the text or if I added this one, was by getting into your career early, you can help develop a network of peers very early on. And as you guys have seen throughout the semester, I'm very big on networking. All right, so that's going to be very important to just get going right away. So this part of the text and this part of the class tends to be a little controversial. And it really is, well, I've got a list of these people: cashier, chopwright, painter, teacher, doctor. Um, and the question is, are these people professionals? Okay. Um, I put this list in a very deliberate format, right? From something that, maybe a 17-year-old kid could get at your local grocery store, right? Moving up the list of something that takes a little bit more time to like a painter, an electrician, all the way to the top of the list, which is what most would consider because it requires the most education and knowledge, is a doctor, right? Where do we draw the line of which one of these persons is or is not a professional? Um, my opinion aside, the textbook has some very specific guidelines. There's 5 attributes which make up a professional. And I would say probably this first attribute is the one that differentiates most of the people on that list, right? So number 1 is master's skills grounded in theory. Okay, so these skills can be one of 3. These skills can be cognitive, perceptual, or interpersonal. And if you think about it, somebody who is, let's say, at the lowest end, a cashier, oftentimes they don't need interpersonal skills for their job. Oftentimes, okay, maybe you want to talk and you don't want to be completely boring. Oftentimes, their cognitive skills of recognizing issues does not need to be high, right? It does not need to be high to work as a cashier. As you go up the ladder, there's still some issues with this in terms of what the text would classify as a professional, right? It really starts to get tricky as someone like a painter or a plumber. Our textbook does not recognize them as a professional. Instead, they are considered tradesmen, right? So the biggest distinction for them would be both on the interpersonal and cognitive side, where for them, they have these fairly stable sets of problems that they have to deal with on an everyday basis in their workplace. However, if you look at somebody like a doctor who, let's say, has to operate, or a physical therapist who's dealing with a movement disorder, these problems tend to be a little bit more complex in an ever-changing dynamic environment. So these people, right, so a physical therapist, an athletic trainer, a doctor, those are people that meet the full criteria of mastering skills grounded in theory. All right. So the next one is performing services for clients, right? So you're giving assistance to others, usually in the spirit of helpfulness, right, and concern, wanting to help them. So committing help to others. An easy example is thinking of nurses during the pandemic. They were absolutely putting their lives on the line in the spirit of simply trying to help others. You render this expert service, right? You do not require help. As an expert, oftentimes you can operate fairly autonomously. And lastly, with regards to performing a service, you should be trying to remove service dependence. Okay, you shouldn't be trying to have somebody come see you all the time. All right, and if that is your attempt to simply keep your business afloat, you're violating ethics, which is another component of this. Right, so the saying would be like, give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man a fish, right? Feed him for a lifetime. And that's a lot of what this is. Again, if we come back to physical therapist per se, your goal isn't to just simply throw some heat on an injury, maybe do some stim, and then send them out into the real world. Okay, they come back a week later because they're banged up, and just repeat. That's not your goal. Your goal is to get to the root of the problem while treating the problem, and then educate them on how they can fix the problem so they no longer have to come see you. So the other 3 are granted monopoly status by the community. That's pretty simple. Others cannot provide a service, provide the same service you can. Guided by ethics. Okay, there's a nice code of ethics. I don't think it's ACM. I think it's ACE has on page 275. You guys can check that out. And lastly, this one is a little unique on this list because it's hard to completely understand, but it's meeting the expectations and standards of the subculture. Okay, so just standard good work hygiene, I'll say, right? You need to be well organized. Don't watch the clock all the time. Every 5 minutes, okay, is it time for me to go? Is it time for me to go? No, be willing to work extra. That's very important, right? a question I pose to people is, should a physical education teacher smoke? A doctor, personal trainer? And the answer is not really, right? If you want to truly excel in your field, sorry, there's a little bit of a glare here. But if you want to truly excel in your field and for people to buy into you, right, doing something like smoking when you're supposed to be a health care professional, right, does not really meet the standard of your subculture. So here's a little story to kind of support this. So when I was opening up my gym, I was lifting a little bit, maybe twice a week. However, at the time, I was still a competitive endurance athlete. I was competing in half marathons and triathlons, and being a competitive person, I wanted to do really well. So my body weight was fairly low, whatever would get me to my ideal time. Usually, I weighed somewhere between 145 and 152 pounds. Okay, so I'm about 5 feet 8. So 5 feet 8, 147 pounds is not big at all. It's fairly thin. So when I was opening up my gym or when I was working at my local New York sports club, right, it was a little hard for me to get people to buy into me being a personal trainer, to buy into my knowledge, even though at the time I could have been the most knowledgeable person in the world. They might not have trusted me because I didn't look the part. How is this guy going to tell me how to stack on loads of muscle if he only weighs 147 pounds, right? So again, despite what my knowledge may have been, sometimes you have to look the part, especially early on in your career. All right. So what really drives us as professionals? So this researcher, Hal Lawson, really found two mechanisms which drive our actions or our conduct. One being a mechanical market-driven professional, the other being a civic-driven, a social trustee professional. So the book really paints the market-driven person as the villain in this sense, where they're focused on their own personal aspirations. Sometimes they forget about their clients, and they're looking to compete with other professionals. I don't think it's necessarily a terrible thing to be partly mechanical or market-driven. There's nothing wrong with trying to compete with other professionals, and there's definitely nothing wrong to have personal aspirations. I think having a nice hybrid of being this market-driven and social, civic-driven professional is important. But obviously the most important thing is having this goal, right, of developing social wellness, right? It is your responsibility to do these things. And your career well-being, how you're doing financially, right, comes second. But I think if you're just simply focusing on doing the best you can for your culture, your people, your clients, right, the financial side of things will simply come naturally. All right, so we move on to education within the physical activity professional career. So what does a standard school education look like, right? A kinesiology education. Well, you're going to have to take your liberal arts, and that's just like any other major. You take your liberal arts like math, philosophy, whatever it is. And a lot of people early on, why the hell am I taking these courses? It's very common to have that thought. But there is a reason behind this, and it's because it helps give you this foundation, and it also gives you exposure to some other fields. I forget the exact number, but it's something like 60% of undergraduates change their major at some point. So if you have little to no exposure to other fields, how do you know what you would want to change your major to, right? But most importantly for our field, it gives us a foundation. Math, history, especially math can definitely be a strong foundational element depending on where you go within the physical activity professional field. Okay, then you've got your physically active coursework. So something like your gym classes. This is obviously incredibly important because I just finished saying you have to play the part. You have to, unfortunately, it's tough to be recognized as a true physical activity professional if you're morbidly obese. Okay, so you really need to get into your gym classes, do well in your gym classes, and then you can also start to apply your liberal arts education to these physical activity classes. Okay, then you have your theoretical coursework. Your theoretical coursework is probably where this class starts. So you see, sometimes we do talk about theory in this class. We talk about some conceptual frameworks of the spheres of kinesiology. So that's like, this is an introduction to some theoretical coursework. And the theories are grounding, can provide justification for different solutions in the world as you get exposed to it. Right? As you continuously move along, you've got your professional coursework, right? So as you guys get into higher levels within the kinesiology program, right? An example would be my KINS 4520. KINS 4520 is Advanced Principles of Resistance Training. Usually you're going to take that in your senior year. And for us, it's Advanced Principles of Resistance Training. I teach them how to teach the back squat, how to teach the deadlift, how to teach the bench press. So instead of just being in a gym class, because I also teach something like KINS 1102, right, where I teach them the basics, how to perform it, I'm now teaching them how to teach it. So how to be that professional teaching it, how to be the personal trainer, so on and so forth. And then finally, the last one are internships or some variation of internships. So obviously in the sports management field, or even in the training field, internships are the very common form. Usually, like at my gym, for instance, at 2 local colleges, I bring in interns once a semester to help give them some experience and exposure to my world. Within the physical education field, you do student teaching. Within ATPT, you usually have some clinical internships or clinical assignments during school. But the whole point of this is really to fully immerse yourself in your future, right? What is your future going to look like? And this is the best time to truly get a glimpse of, okay, now I mean, this is it. Do I really want to do this the rest of my life? So as we wrap up the text, or the chapter rather, the question becomes like, at this point, you really have to ask, should you pursue a career in physical activity? Well, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? All right, and this is where I would do an activity. I would say list 5 of your personal strengths, 5 of your personal weaknesses, and maybe not 5 because sometimes that's hard. Do 3 and 3, right? They could be general. That's fine, right? But understanding your strengths and weaknesses can be really helpful in figuring out A, if you want to get into the field or not, or B, what you need to work on to continue to excel in that field. So an example would be, right, myself personally. I am a fairly quiet person. I was fairly quiet unless I was well versed on a topic. Okay, so what did this really mean? Well, as a personal trainer, while I'm well versed, I'm still fairly quiet. That's hard. You're supposed to sell yourself. Like as a personal trainer, a lot of it is the sale, sale, sale. If you want to own a business as a physical therapist, as a chiropractor, sales are incredibly important. You could be the most knowledgeable person in the world, but if you have no charisma and you don't know how to sell yourself to a client, it's going to be really hard to be successful. And I'm still not very good at it, but I am willing to, kind of share my voice a little bit more than I would have previously. An obvious question that you need to ask yourself is, how interested are you in physical activity? How interested are you in going out and running, lifting weights, swimming, whatever? If you guys graduate college and for 10 years you don't partake in any ounce of physical activity, not only is that a terrible idea for your health, right? But it's going to be really tough for you to kind of relate knowledge in the physical activity world if you're not actually doing it, all right? It's a cornerstone of health and well-being. Um, Personal strengths and weaknesses match with the profession. Like I said, it really depends. Like, using my example as the personal trainer, where I was fairly quiet and I didn't really like speaking to people too much. Um, Did they line up? No, but I was aware of it and I worked on it over the years. Will this college prepare you well? So I would normally poll you guys, and honestly think about this. Do you feel prepared going into your goal, your dream job? Some of you guys, the answer should probably be no. You know, you're only sophomores or juniors, and a few freshmen, I think. Right? So, well, what do you do to fix this? What do you do to change this? All right, so here's a little checklist at the end. Well, academic excellence. Academic excellence is a big one, right? Do you have a 3.5 GPA or higher? If you do not have a 3.5 GPA or higher, work on that. Step one. Step two, do you have any current participation in any professional organization within your field? No? Yes. Are you working at any type of physical therapist studio? Are you like, even if you're working as an administrator within, like, let's say a high school athletics office, that could work, right? Do you have any current engagement in college or club life? Oftentimes, many colleges, I don't know if Brooklyn, I know Mercy has it, is an undergraduate kinesiology club. Right? That's definitely something you can put on your resume when you're applying to other schools or jobs. I've said this repeatedly. You guys all should be volunteering. Volunteer for something within your field. It will help. It will be a big builder on your resume, and again, it gives you more exposure to what you want to do. Right? I volunteered for about 5 years as a basketball coach. I knew I loved coaching. I loved coaching. I loved going to games. I loved going to practices, and to this day I still work as a head coach for a track and field team. All right. And then lastly, are you thinking of attending graduate school? For many of you in this field, it might actually be required, right? So physical therapists require a doctorate of physical therapy. Athletic trainers require a master. Obviously, MDs require many years of schooling. If you want to be a researcher, usually that requires a master's, if not a PhD. In education, you need to get your master's. So usually there needs to be some form of higher education above an undergraduate degree. And if you don't want to do any education whatsoever, again, this might not be your field. So these are some questions that you have to start to ask yourself and think about for the future in order to better prepare yourself. That's all I got for today. Hope you guys enjoyed.